23 years of my life were spent in what I considered to be an exemplary marriage. It was a time of happiness, and I truly believed in that happiness until the day when an incident that literally turned my life upside down came out of the blue. If you are assuming that my spouse simply cheated on me, there is deeper to this story than meets the eye. It all started from the moment I stood on the threshold of the bedroom as if in shock. My thoughts were confused and my eyes clouded with incomprehension of what was happening in front of me. I was confronted with irrefutable evidence of infidelity when I saw my wife, with whom we had been so close for a long 23 years, in the arms of a formidable hairy man. This picture was complemented by the audible evidence, the voice of James, the manager from my wife's office, and Jessica, my spouse, who was responding to his call with obvious eagerness. I couldn't believe that my wife, whom I loved and valued so much, was capable of such betrayal. James's voice echoing off the walls of the room made me think about the boundaries of marriage, the sanctity of it, which at that moment seemed violated. My emotions raged while I faced the reality unfolding before my eyes, contrary to his defiant comments. In that moment, faced with betrayal, I couldn't help myself. My instincts, honed by years of military training, took over. With determination and quickness, I grabbed James by the hair, delivering a powerful blow to his cheek that left him unconscious. Jessica, my wife, didn't even seem to notice my presence, remaining in the room. I could hear her reaction to the consequences of my action. My hands trembled, overwhelmed with anxiety and worry. I pondered my next steps, fearing for my own well-being. Searching for answers, I traveled to a nearby park to sort through the chaos of my thoughts in the privacy of my car. Using Google, I tried to find advice on what to do after knocking out a man in his own bedroom. Despite jokes and unserious comments that were more entertaining than helpful, I came across one intriguing article. This article suggested that there were certain signs of impending infidelity that I had not previously even realized. Although most of the information appeared to be written from a biased perspective and was of little use, it still added layers of confusion and betrayal to my already crowded inner world. I realized that I may have missed some obvious signs of betrayal. Google proved useless in my search for a solution, leaving me alone with my ruminations. Upon returning to work, I slipped discreetly through the back door and immediately called Lauren, my secretary. I urgently asked her to deliver some letters to the post office, explaining that a certain situation had occurred. Despite her sore arm, she agreed and returned to her desk. I continued with my daily chores, but thoughts of the day's events never left me. Returning home, I was greeted by the aroma of dinner, possibly Italian cuisine. Jessica was busy cooking in the kitchen. I greeted her, expressing my hope for an Italian dinner. She asked about my day, and I jokingly told her about a random idea to blind a woman with 3 air conditioners over the windshield of a car. In response, Jessica shared her usual routine, skillfully hiding the more intriguing aspects of her life. I apologized and went to take a shower to change. I half expected our bedroom to look like a crime scene. However, everything was fine. However, during dinner I noticed a small blood stain on the mattress, which prompted me to ask Jessica about it. Going upstairs to change, I examined her leg closely and offered to kiss the small cut to help it heal faster. Jessica explained that the cut on her leg was the result of a careless shave. I accepted her explanation, and we continued our cozy dinner in the living room. However, I was still concerned about the bloodstain on the mattress. When I mentioned it, Jessica tried to deflect the conversation by suggesting I kiss something else. Normally, I would have gladly accepted such an offer, but this time, given recent events and thoughts of another man, I declined, hiding my concern under a mask of indifference. That calmed Jessica down a little. After dinner, we decided to watch a few episodes on Netflix, choosing It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia as a compromise that suited us both. Later that evening, Jessica tried to get me into the bedroom, but I excused myself with the need to check some paperwork. Although I wanted to be closer to her, thoughts of betrayal kept me on my toes. Throughout our 23 years of marriage, we had a beautiful daughter, Bailey, and Jessica was a wonderful wife and mother. However, as I contemplated a possible divorce and the consequences, I made a list of assets that I was prepared to pass on to Jessica. This included the house, which I had never particularly loved, for the sake of a more equitable division of assets. To me, Bailey was the most valuable thing I had, and I was determined to do everything I could to avoid sharing her with Jessica. My nightly work at the computer researching medical facilities where James might be was part of my plan. With my expertise in hospital software, I was able to figure out his whereabouts and schedule the morning visit. My actions were clearly planned, and I went to bed around 1:00 a.m. while Jessica was already asleep. Her proximity seemed almost unbearable to me now, and I was amazed at how quickly my perception of her changed from sexy to disgusting. The next morning, leaving Jessica still asleep, I left for work. I brewed myself a cup of coffee, added garlic powder to it, and ate a scone. When I arrived at the hospital, I met with Leela, the hospital administrator, and an acquaintance of mine who had given me a pass to access the servers. At the information desk, I asked about James and was given his room number. When I entered the room, I found James conscious, but his face was so covered in bandages and swollen that he didn't recognize me. His pain was apparently as bad as the throbbing pain in my arm from the blow. I quickly grabbed his medical records and photographed them, taking several shots from different angles around his bed. James was mumbling something incoherent, but I paid no attention to it and left the room. At work around 8:30 a.m., I got a text from Jessica about a problem with the coffee pot, which to my taste was pretty normal. After a number of urgent matters, I informed Lauren of my intention to take the rest of the day off. I arranged to meet Bailey for lunch, hoping she would agree to come home with me. Initially, Bailey was incredulous, even accusing me of trying to leave my mother. However, after showing her the pictures and explaining the situation, I could see how shocked she was and I had to comfort her. Eventually, Bailey suggested that we divorce Jessica and leave her with nothing. We discussed this, recognizing that there were no necessary conditions for such a decision. Bailey calmed down and we went home together. When Jessica walked in and saw us together on the couch, she tried to hug Bailey, but her daughter pulled away, expressing her discomfort and displeasure. Bailey accused Jessica of not caring enough about personal hygiene and even suggested that she might have behaved inappropriately at work. Jessica was taken aback by those words, and Bailey stood her ground. Jessica's look of expectation of an explanation from me was replaced by shock when I informed her of the ambulance and police visit. Her eyes glazed over and she fainted. Together with Bailey, we helped her to settle on the couch, suggesting that she might have lost consciousness for a moment. We reassured each other that she would soon regain consciousness. I sat waiting for her awakening, discussing schoolwork and other household matters with Bailey until Jessica gave signs of life, emitting a groan. Bailey hurried to the kitchen and returned with a cool, damp cloth and a bottle of water. She gently helped Jessica wash herself and gave her a drink of water. Gradually, Jessica came to her senses and asked Bailey how she knew about her recent encounters. Bailey answered sarcastically, and Jessica expressed her desire to discuss it privately with her and my husband. Bailey was clearly outraged at being treated like a child, and although her anger was palpable, she continued the conversation. Jessica admitted her mistakes and apologized, to which Bailey expressed her disappointment, mentioning that her spring break plans were now ruined. I was shocked by Bailey's bold words, as I had never heard her say anything like that before. The emotional scene continued as Bailey expressed her deep disappointment in Jessica, blaming her for the destruction of our family. In this chaos, I tried to intervene with questions, seeking to clarify what had really happened between Jessica and James. Jessica, overwhelmed with emotion, could not contain herself and began to cry hysterically. When she calmed down a bit, I insisted on getting answers, asking her if she regretted her feelings for James and seeking happiness elsewhere. When Jessica tried to explain, I interrupted her by stating that I was at work at the time of the incident, according to the police allegations. Jessica incredulously questioned me about how I knew about the police investigation, to which I stated, in a mock theatrical manner, that I had spy devices around the house and connections to the CIA and the Mafia. A frustrated Jessica begged for a break, covering her ears, and Bailey offered a pause in our tense discussion. I took Bailey to Dairy Queen, hoping to provide her with temporary relief from the situation. When we returned, Jessica, who seemed calmer, was sitting on the couch. Bailey handed her a Blizzard pie from Dairy Queen, and Jessica absent-mindedly took a bite, wrinkling her nose at the taste. Sitting down, Jessica expressed a desire to explain her actions and what had happened. I dismissed her attempts to give details, emphasizing that I was more concerned with what her plans were for the future. This question seemed to alarm her, and I asked the question, Why do those who commit despicable acts feel entitled to explain their actions, while the victims are forced to listen to excuses for their misfortune? After expressing my frustration and uncertainty about how to proceed, I heard Bailey's suggestion to go somewhere far away, but begged her not to make matters worse. Jessica, my daughter, expressed hope for overcoming the problem, recognizing her grave mistake. She begged me to give her a chance to prove that she wouldn't do something like this again. Bailey took the word mistake ironically, comparing it to trivial blunders, which made Jessica realize that her actions were much more serious. Apologizing for her stupidity, she promised to show genuine remorse. Bailey asked why I didn't just ask the man to leave instead of resorting to extreme measures. I, Cedric, admitted that I was aware of the situation due to the surveillance equipment and suggested that I use Bailey's room or bathroom for such meetings, cringing in disgust. I made up a story about ties to the mafia and CIA to hide the truth and emphasize the importance of secrecy, admitting my irrationality. When asked about my plan for the future, I admitted that I didn't have one and that I didn't expect to get caught. Bailey sarcastically pointed out that this was quite normal since it had only happened twice and I apparently hadn't counted on the consequences. I emphasized that it wasn't normal, however, and thought about how I could convince Cedric of my honesty, despite the examples he and Bailey gave proving my past lies. I eventually admitted that I had indeed lied in that situation, expressing my frustration. Bailey asked if I had hit the man when saying goodbye. I explained that I hadn't, causing even more confusion. Cedric emphasized that it wasn't the number of times that mattered, it was the fact of my actions. Jessica looked at us with a pained look, asking Bailey to stop interrupting and let me speak, but she stopped suddenly, sensing my unwillingness to hear her explanation. I repeated that I didn't want to hear excuses. I wanted to know her plans for the future. Crossing her hands in her lap, she sobbed again, admitting that she didn't know what she should do next. Frustrated, I offered to move her things to the guest room as I couldn't make her leave. I made it clear to Jessica that I didn't want her anywhere near me, despite her tears. Insisting on reaffirming our arrangement, I remarked not without irony about the poor quality of the bed, which I assumed had been bought 50 years ago. Jessica, overwhelmed with emotion, begged me not to, but I remained adamant. Bailey humorously pointed out that I wasn't using the bed for romantic purposes anyway. I changed my stance, deciding to refrain from using the bed, jokingly suggesting potential bedbug bites from James. Jessica almost desperately denied any other involvement, but I reminded her of James' blood stain on the mattress and the potential risks. I mentioned the possibility of AIDS and suggested we go to Adams for a change. Bailey was excited about the idea, and together we decided to move. I quickly packed my bag, taking only what I needed for a couple days, and we set off for Adams. Despite our general depressiveness, the change of scenery and slight intoxication lifted our spirits. Bailey's cheerful drinking was able to lift our spirits, and we both found some solace in that night. The next morning at breakfast, we tried to discuss our future. My daughter inquired about my plans, full of uncertainty. I suggested that I consult a lawyer, especially after her question about whether I could overcome what had happened and stay with her. I expressed my doubts, recognizing that the betrayal seemed irreparable to me. Bailey, realizing the gravity of our 23 years together, left for class, and I decided to stay one more night, realizing that I would have to face the reality of the situation when I returned home. At home, I found Jessica at the kitchen table, visibly upset. Pouring myself a glass of milk, I confronted her face to face. When she started to explain, I stopped her, stating that I wasn't interested in hearing about her needs. I emphasized my desire to have a faithful wife and a reliable mother for Bailey. Jessica, on the verge of tears, tried to express her feelings, but I interrupted her, insisting that we visit Robinson's office the next day. Her confusion increased when I bluntly stated that this was standard procedure for couples considering divorce. She objected, insisting that she didn't want a divorce, but I was adamant, emphasizing the seriousness of the consequences of her actions. When she begged me to give her a chance to make things right, I remained skeptical, doubting her honesty. She admitted her mistake, expressed remorse and a desire to make amends, but I insisted on meeting with an attorney to discuss our options. Her pleas for a conversation I juxtaposed with a question about how she would feel if the roles were reversed. Her response indicated that she had expected a more lenient response from me. I accepted her apology but remained uncertain about our future. I emphasized my commitment to monogamy by stating that I love only one woman, my wife. I am open to the idea of counseling with a therapist and am even considering attending church, perhaps with Bailey. I apologized sincerely to Cedric, acknowledging that I still have a lot of work to do to make things right and begging for a chance despite my extreme disbelief. I delved into the depths of the situation I had experienced with this woman for 23 years. I loved her, and now, despite Bailey's apparent agreement, I questioned whether it would be the right decision to kick her out. I was afraid of losing Bailey's respect. Looking at Jessica, I saw her with frightened eyes, like a puppy caught spoiling her slippers. Turning to Jessica, I recognized that she had indeed made a serious mistake. I didn't know how she could get me to trust her again or see her as desirable. I was willing to give her a chance, but it all depended on how things went from here. The next morning, Bailey called and told me that Jessica had asked her to go to church with her the following Sunday. I explained the situation, and Bailey, understandingly, said that she was glad things had worked out the way they had, although she was angry with Jessica and had no intention of putting up with this kind of thing going forward. She knew that Jessica loved me and that I loved her. "I'll help in any way I can. I love you, Daddy, and I'll always be here for you," Bailey said, giving me her support. I was grateful for her words and reassured her back. "Thank you, sweetheart. Just focus on yourself. I love you too. I'm sure we'll figure it all out." Jessica had always been a beautiful woman, and I remained optimistic, hoping that the memories of 23 good years would eventually overshadow the pain of a terrible day. We'll have to see how things develop. I decided to turn to Google for answers to some common questions. What do you think of this story? Share your opinion in the comments and tell me what you would do if you were in a similar situation. I think this man did the right thing, even if it was under strong emotional influence. What is your opinion?
Thank you so much for watching my video and your time. Please subscribe to my channel and click on the bell button. Also, I am very interested to know your personal opinion about this story. You can write it in the comments. I will definitely read it and reply to you personally.